will tell you that we want to have a discussion just about the movement itself in Missouri. So Amber, I don't know if Amber's in the room, but I hope she's going to, there she is, she's going to join us. And leaders from the Missouri NORML chapters, please come forward as well. Terry, if Terry's around, Terry Zeman that is, so certainly welcome to come up here. We don't have a set format, but we want to have a dialogue with all of you and try to tell you what has been going on in various parts of the state, including right here in St. Louis. Hi, Abby. And also get some feedback from you as to what ought to happen and what you'd like to see happen. You know, we've been holding these conferences, NORML up until the last couple of years on our own, has been holding these conferences generally on a biannual basis, a spring event, a fall event. We've met in Columbia most often because that's a central location. It seemed easier for folks to join us there. I'm glad we're here in St. Louis today because obviously St. Louis is the largest single population center in the state by far. We are aware that we need to, I think, create more of a presence in Kansas City in particular. And Amber is there, George Biswell's there, and we've got other good activists who live in the Kansas City area now. But I know that we'd like to see the movement in Kansas City coalesce more and unite more than it has so far. We've talked today about a lot of the issues that are pending. I think it's just been assumed that all of you are aware, but I'll spend a minute telling you that SMCR came into existence less than 2 years ago for the purpose specifically of promoting ballot initiatives. And initially, our goal was to place a legalization, a tax and regulate proposal on the Missouri statewide ballot in November of 2014. We fell short, I beg your pardon, 2012, and we fell short of that goal, but just as we've said in regard to other efforts around the state that didn't initially succeed, we laid the groundwork for and we laid the foundation for what we believe will be success in the future. Now, as to whether we might still attempt to put something on the ballot in 2014, I think it would be fair to say there's a consensus, at least among the SMCR board, that that's probably not the best use of our resources. And as impatient as we all are to see the movement make progress, I'm afraid that would not be likely for the reasons I articulated earlier in regard to the Columbia effort. We lost 3 times in a row because we did not put it on a presidential ballot. As soon as we put it on a presidential ballot, we won dramatically. We won big time. And that's been shown around the country. I mean, time after time. And it's not to say that it would be impossible to win in an election other than a presidential race, but it sure isn't easy, and it's not likely. So I think, again, not presuming to speak for anyone other than myself, that I think that there is a consensus that a statewide tax and regulate measure on the November of 2016 ballot is definitely what we're working toward, and that we hope to see that happen. And it's obviously not too early at all to begin planning for a 2016 election right now. People are already declaring they're running for governor of Missouri in November of 2016, and the candidates for president in November of 2016 are already jockeying for position. And we need to make sure that we're ready. We need to make sure that we equip all of you, the people who want to see this movement succeed, with the information and the resources, and in particular a good proposal that we can all get behind and feel good about. One of the things we might want to discuss at this session, in fact, is what specific features that measure should include. Many of you may be aware that in Washington State, although I-502, the legalization measure there passed, it was certainly not without controversy within the movement. Many people who were longtime supporters of marijuana law reform were not entirely happy with I-502, and I think that's primarily for 2 reasons. One is that it created a presumption of intoxication at a level of 5 nanograms per milliliter, and in particular medical patients were fearful that they would be automatically branded as driving while impaired anytime they get behind the wheel. And that concern is certainly not limited to medical patients either. But there were actually some, I think not many, I think it's been overstated, but there were actually some in the medical marijuana industry in Washington State who opposed I-502 because they felt that they would lose their, I dare say, because they felt they would lose their monopoly or lose their market. And we certainly don't want that to happen here. We do want to see, I think what we want to see is an effort more similar to what happened in Colorado, which, unlike I-502, allows for personal cultivation. I know that personally, I have always felt that that is the single most critical feature of any legalization measure. As long as we as individual human beings have the right to grow our own, I don't care how many corporations are involved, I don't care how many taxes Roy Ellinger puts on it, it just doesn't matter. You know, it just doesn't matter. And cannabis is easier to cultivate than tobacco, and it's easier to make than distilling alcohol or brewing beer. And we don't really need corporations to package our cannabis for us. But I'm not opposed to letting them try it. They can create a product that's popular, and if the free market demonstrates there's a demand for their product, then let them market that as well. But again, in Colorado, there is a provision which allows for personal cultivation of up to 6 plants, and there's some other specific provisions that allow for you to possess a larger amount. And I think we would all want, I hope we would all want to see that. Now, the people in Washington State weren't unsympathetic to that. They just found that their polling and their focus group showed that that was something that might have kept them from winning. In hindsight, which is always far clearer than foresight, in hindsight, it looks like it would have passed even if they had allowed personal cultivation. But they chose to be a little more conservative, and they chose to try to respond to and anticipate some of the opposition's arguments, and that was one of them. They felt they had to give up personal cultivation. There, of course, will be retail sales. It's hard for me to imagine voters who say, well, I'm okay with, you know, selling pot down at the 7-Eleven, but for God's sake, I don't want you growing it in your basement. I mean, who looks at the issue that way? I don't know who those voters are, but in Washington, they thought those voters might make the difference. In Colorado again, and I mean, somebody alluded to this earlier, in Colorado, what they did uniquely in the nation with their medical marijuana proposal was to put it in the state constitution. Now, the primary advantage of doing that is that the legislature can't repeal it. I am persuaded that if we were to enact a statutory marijuana legalization in Missouri, and I think regardless of how many people voted for it, just like the animal welfare proposal a couple of years ago, the legislature will turn right around and repeal it. I mean, I'll call a special session to repeal it. I think that we must, this is again my personal view, I think that we must pursue a constitutional amendment. It requires more signatures. It's going to be much harder to get the requisite number of signatures, but it does not require any more votes at the ballot box, and that's important. You know, if we can win a constitutional amendment, then we have won the issue, and it won't be just snatched away from us like the Springfield City Council did in our brief victory down there in the Queen City of the Ozarks. But anyway, those are some of my random thoughts, and I want to pass the mic down the row, and I want to ask all of you to be at least as brief as I was, and then let's open it up for dialogue with folks in the audience.
All right, please. Okay, yeah, good point. So I will try to be very brief because I've been talking all day, so I'm sure you're getting tired of listening to me, and I'm, you know, my voice is starting to give out, not really, but so I would say that, you know, let me just sort of lay out how I think of the strategy for the next few years. I think, you know, we need to push for reforms in the legislature and also probably at the local level for the next, between now and 2014. And that will hopefully set us up in a position where the state that keeps the discussion going in the state. It starts to convince more and more people that we have to change the laws. It improves our polling numbers. You know, right now we're polling, as I said, a majority of Missourians support this. But basically, if you want to launch an initiative an initiative for anything, actually, the typical political wisdom says you want 60% support before you can win, because you typically lose support as election day approaches. It's not that people give up on the issue specifically, or the issue in general, but every specific proposal will turn off some percentage of the population. You know, as Dan was saying about Washington, you know, some people won't like the home grow provision. Some people won't like X, Y, and Z. You never really know until you put it out there exactly what elements of it are going to be disliked by certain groups of the population. But you know one thing, that you know, there will be fewer people that will support a specific proposal than will support the idea as a general question. So that's basically the next 2 years, and that'll also allow us to, we have to attract a serious amount of money to win in probably 2016, because you cannot do this for under $1.5 million, $2 million. The conventional wisdom, again, is about $200,000 per congressional district in order to pass something like this. And so we need to reach out to the biggest donors, who would be Drug Policy Alliance, who is funded in large part by George Soros, who is a billionaire, and Peter Lewis. He doesn't fund Drug Policy Alliance, but Peter Lewis of Progressive Insurance is probably the other guy that does the most funding, who is also a billionaire. And so if we are not able to rely on their backing during an upcoming election, it will make it substantially more difficult to put something on the ballot and pass it. So we are actively courting those contributors, and as soon as if we secure their backing, then I think it's more of a matter of time than a matter of strategy, although that's still important. But so basically, the two key things are keeping the momentum going forward and attracting the support of the people who can make this happen, and that is primarily the people who have lots and lots of money to give to the cause. I will be free to answer any questions after everyone else speaks, but I will turn it over to Trish Bertrand of Springfield NORML.
Hi, Miranda filled you in a lot of what we're doing in Springfield right now. We're also focusing on town meetings. We're trying to reach above and beyond the normal choir to talk to people. We've been somewhat successful at that. And fundraising, it's really what we do in Springfield NORML.
You can just pass it on to Amber.
I'll probably also be brief, which is good because we don't have a lot of time. Again, I'm Amber Langston on the board of directors for Show Me Cannabis, and I'm over in Kansas City, and we haven't had the, I guess, excitement of a local initiative to decriminalize, but I think that that is something that is of interest. Kansas City politics is sort of insular, and the impression that I've got from the city council is they're not really particularly warm to this issue. I think that we need to warm them up to this issue, but we did discuss doing basically what Springfield did this past year after we did not get on the 2012 ballot for the state. We considered trying to get signatures to get something quickly on the ballot for November as well, and I think we probably made a good choice in not doing that, because I think we probably would have pissed some people off. And I think also there was an article that came out in the Star that was like, Kansas City may be the next to decriminalize right after that, and that was not what I really told the reporter, but that was the story, and I think that we may have given the impression that, you know, we're coming for you, and it's made it seem like there's sort of this outside force. And so we are, you know, building in Kansas City, rebuilding our effort there. Kansas City NORML, we don't have anybody from Kansas City NORML here today, but they have started having their public meetings again. They kind of went dormant for a little bit, but they've reactivated. They're going to have a big event the first Saturday in May with the Million Marijuana March that happens all over the world. And then they do a really great hemp fest in the fall. So those things are good for education and information. And I think that, you know, we don't have a city council member like Shane Cohn, the alderman who spoke earlier here in St. Louis, to sort of spearhead that effort. But I think that once we see that happening in St. Louis, that they're going to get a little bit jealous in Kansas City, because they support it. People overwhelmingly on this issue in Kansas City definitely want more progressive policy. If progressive is the right word, we favor better marijuana policies. So I think that we really might see some movement there in the future, and that's really most of what I have to say. So I'll go ahead and pass this to Miranda.
I'm just going to touch briefly on the importance of us networking, especially in our local communities. I think that the roots of NORML in Missouri have really led to this Show Me Cannabis organization. I mean, I know Dan's been involved with NORML for God knows how long, and I think that involvement, Amber's has been involved in NORML groups throughout the state. Trish and I, St. Louis has, I presume, an active community, or at least sometimes they do. I think that's going to be key in the years up to 2016, is to make sure we keep fostering our local communities. spending time to try to get people to come to meetings, and maybe doing just random things. Like in Springfield, we do a street cleanup, and Springfield NORML has a board on a strip of commercial street in our city. I think that little things like that kind of bring the group together and give the organizations a positive view in the community. So yeah, that's all I want to say for now. Just try to get people involved. Try to stay involved if you can. You know, don't stress yourselves out too much. But I think that keeping that community together until we start collecting signatures is what's going to be really important for us.
I am Audis Asylum. I sit on the board of Show Me Cannabis, and I'm also involved with New Approach Oregon, which is kind of the analogous organization in Oregon, legalizing marijuana there, as well as I'm on the board of National Cannabis Coalition, which is one of the national organizations that does a lot of funding for groups like Show Me Cannabis and New Approach Oregon. The point I want to underscore is that one of the principal ways in which the Missouri campaign, to a lesser extent the Oregon campaign, are going to distinguish themselves, especially as compared to the campaigns in Washington and Colorado, is the increased reliance on polling and the increased reliance on research, academic research, that we try and propagate in the public arena. And you know, to that end, two of the things that I do are manage polling and also manage the kind of research programs that we're trying to develop. So right now we have a paper on the economic impact of marijuana legalization, the budgetary impact of marijuana legalization for Missouri. We are soon going to release a paper on the economic impact of hemp legalization in Missouri. We have potentially some papers coming out about impacts on crime and social welfare parameters that we're looking at, and even some research on what kind of lobbying there is from various organizations, police organizations, law enforcement organizations, penal organizations, what kind of lobbying there is against marijuana legalization. So we have a lot of research coming out in the pipeline, and that's really something that I think distinguishes our approach from a lot of the other campaigns across the country. So to that end, if you have suggestions on how we can build out our research program further, or how we can build out our polling programs further, we'd love to hear those comments and work on building out these research.